Hey, how you been? That message, it's not just small talk. It's regret, wrapped in casual words. It only shows up when silence starts echoing louder than her pride. Here's the truth no one really says out loud. Some men don't just pass through a woman's life. They leave a mark, quiet, deep, lasting. And when they're gone, she doesn't just feel emptiness. She feels a shift in standard. Because the man who challenges her to grow, who brings stillness instead of noise, direction instead of confusion, strength without ever needing control, that man, he's unforgettable. Not because he tried to be, but because he was. And if you've ever asked yourself, even quietly, was I that man? Maybe it's time to stop wondering and start listening, because in this video we're revealing the undeniable signs that you were never just a boyfriend. You were the wake-up call, the mirror, the standard, and the truth. She probably didn't realize it until long after you stopped trying to prove it. Stick around. By the end of this video, you won't just know why women regret losing a certain kind of man. You'll know why you were never replaceable to begin with. This is Stoic Station. If you're ready to step into the truth of who you are, like this video. Subscribe. Let's begin with the first sign. Sign number 1. You didn't just love her, you elevated her. You weren't just a presence in her life, you were a turning point. While most men come and go, offering companionship, attention, or comfort, you brought something deeper. You brought direction. You brought challenge. You brought a silent invitation to rise. And the truth is, she took it. She started waking up earlier, reading more, eating cleaner, dressing with more confidence. Not because you asked her to, and certainly not because you controlled her, but because being around you awakened something in her. Your energy made self-improvement feel natural. Your mindset made stagnation uncomfortable. You didn't need to push. Your example did the talking. You didn't just love her. You elevated her. You were the reason she saw herself through a different lens, stronger, smarter, more capable. You introduced her to higher standards, not only in how she was treated, but in how she treated herself. And now that you're gone, that imprint remains. She can't unsee what you taught and showed her. Now every man that follows lives in comparison, and not because you haunt her, but because you exposed her to something real, a kind of partnership that didn't just feel good in the moment, but made her better in the process. Other men may try, they may show up, be nice, be consistent, but they're not you. They don't carry the same fire. They don't make her feel like she's growing. They don't expect more from themselves or from her. That's what stings the most. Because for the first time in her life, she was with someone who didn't just want her, but believed in her, stretched her, and held her accountable to her own potential. And now? Now she's surrounded by comfort, not elevation. And while that might seem easier, it doesn't feel the same. You didn't date her to fix her. You didn't force her to change. You simply held a mirror to her highest self, and she rose to meet it. And the moment she walked away from that energy, she began to feel it. The quiet ache, the internal longing, the realization that she may never be asked to grow like that again. That's when regret doesn't shout, it whispers. And she hears it loudest in the silence you left behind. Sign number 2. You gave her safety, but never lost yourself. There was a quiet power in the way you held space for her. She could breathe around you. She could speak without editing herself. There were no games, no masks, no filters. With you, she felt like she could finally put her armor down and be seen, not just for her beauty, but for her fears, flaws, doubts, and everything in between. But here's what made that safety so rare and why she can't forget it. You never lost yourself in the process. Most men, when trying to be safe, end up becoming small. They silence themselves, agree with everything she says, and lose their edge. Others go the opposite way. They freeze up when emotions run high, detach, shut down, or become defensive the moment they feel discomfort. But you weren't like either of them. You didn't flinch when she cried. You didn't panic when she got distant. You didn't try to fix her feelings, and you didn't collapse under the weight of them either. You stood there, steady, unwavering. You didn't try to control her emotions. You just didn't let them control you. That's what made you unforgettable. You made her feel emotionally secure, without ever becoming emotionally dependent. She never had to worry about how you'd react, because you had already done the inner work. You didn't need her to shrink so you could feel big. You didn't need her to regulate your moods. You came whole, and in doing so, you gave her a kind of peace she didn't even know she needed. You were strong enough to hear her pain and not internalize it, patient enough to hold her silence without pushing, confident enough to let her come to you without chasing when she pulled away. You were soft where it mattered and unshakable where it counted. And now that you're gone, she's starting to understand something most people never do. Emotional safety isn't just about warmth, it's about grounded strength. Kindness without boundaries turns into weakness. But you never blurred that line. You knew how to make her feel safe, without ever becoming someone she could walk over. That's what built her trust. Not just your empathy, but your stability. Not just that you listened, but that you listened without losing yourself. And when things got hard, you didn't flail. You didn't beg. You didn't guilt trip. You let go. Not because you didn't care, but because you respected both her space and your own dignity. And now she's out there, surrounded by men who either shut down or fall apart, realizing just how rare you were. Not just a safe space, but a man with a spine. And that mix, that delicate but powerful blend of emotional intelligence and inner strength, that's not something she'll find again anytime soon. And she knows it. Sign number 3. You made her part of your world, but never your whole world. Long before she showed up, you were already building something that mattered. A life filled with purpose, a vision you were chasing, a mission that gave meaning to your days and direction to your actions. She didn't complete your life. She was simply invited into it. And for a while, that's exactly what drew her in. Because something about the way you carried yourself, with discipline, with focus, with quiet certainty, was magnetic. You weren't seeking someone to save you from boredom or loneliness. You had friends, hobbies, commitments, momentum, and she could feel it. You didn't orbit around her. You never dropped everything just to prove your love. You showed up fully, but you never abandoned yourself. She mattered, deeply, but she was never your purpose. And that quiet, subtle boundary, one you never had to announce, created a space where respect could grow. She admired you for it, even if she didn't always say it out loud. Because deep down, every woman wants to be chosen by a man who doesn't need to choose her, one who stands whole on his own and still says, "There's room for you here." But at some point she got used to it. She began to test what would happen if she pulled away, if she made herself less available, if she walked. And part of her believed that if she did, you'd fall apart. But you didn't. You didn't chase. You didn't beg. You didn't spiral. Instead, you returned to the very path you'd never left, only this time you moved faster. You sharpened your edge. You showed up to the gym earlier, pushed your limits harder, got clearer on your goals, poured into your work, and walked forward. Not to prove anything to her, but to prove something to yourself. You didn't collapse. You expanded. And that's when something shifted in her. She expected to feel powerful in her leaving, but what she felt instead was your absence, the weight of your stillness, the contrast between her assumptions and your reality. She began to understand that your peace wasn't something she created. It was something you cultivated long before she arrived. Most men, when they lose a woman, lose themselves too. They were never truly grounded to begin with, but you were the opposite. You didn't make her your mission. You made your life your mission. And when she left, that mission didn't falter, it intensified. Now, she's starting to feel what it means to lose a man like that. Because the world is full of men who will abandon their purpose for a woman, but it is painfully rare to find a man who can love deeply without losing his identity, who can give without being emptied, who can care without becoming codependent. She wasn't just replaced. She was reminded that she was never your foundation. You were already rooted, already rising. And now, from a distance, she watches you grow into more than you were even with her. And in that quiet ache of comparison, that's where regret lives. Sign number 4. You stirred her soul, then let her wander. You didn't chase her. You didn't overwhelm her with constant messages, constant praise, or constant validation. But when you showed up with presence, real, grounded, emotionally intelligent presence. And that's what made the difference. You knew how to stir something in her, not just desire, but depth. You made her think. You made her feel seen. You created space for intensity without suffocating her with attention. You knew when to pull her close and when to give her room to breathe. There was rhythm in the way you moved, intuitive, respectful, unspoken. That rhythm didn't come from manipulation. It came from awareness. It came from understanding how attraction thrives, not on desperation or certainty, but on curiosity, polarity, and presence. You didn't flood her with effort, and you didn't play it cool either. You gave her just enough to feel your attention, but not enough to take it for granted. You made her feel wanted without ever making her feel entitled. And that balance, that rare and powerful dance between availability and self-respect, most men never master it, because most men either give too much, too soon, or pull back so hard they leave a woman confused and disconnected. But you didn't do either. You remained centered. You remained selective. You gave her the gift of your time only when it felt genuine, never to seek approval, never to win her over, and never to avoid losing her. You didn't overshare, but you didn't shut down either. You let her wonder. You let her lean in. You let her feel the subtle pull of mystery, not because you were hiding anything, but because you were full enough without needing to be understood all at once. And that subtle pull, that quiet confidence, that emotional restraint, it woke something up in her. She felt alive with you. Now she finds herself in the arms of someone who's always there, always agreeable, always accessible. He says all the right things, gives her all the time she could ask for. But somehow, something is missing. It's not excitement, it's not drama, it's not even mystery, it's soul. Because what you gave her wasn't just attention, it was depth, it was contrast, it was a sense of being emotionally met and emotionally challenged. You weren't afraid to call her out. You weren't afraid to push her thinking. You weren't afraid to walk away when boundaries were crossed. And that made your presence carry weight. Now, in the stillness of her safe new relationship, she notices the difference. Everything is smooth. Nothing is wrong. And yet, nothing stirs her anymore. And this is what hits her hardest. You weren't just fun. You weren't just romantic. You weren't just bold. You were the emotional contrast that reminded her she was alive. And once a woman has felt that, truly felt it, she can't settle for anything less. That's the moment when she looks back. not because she wants to relive the past, but because she realizes she's been handed peace without passion, affection without presence, and routine without meaning. You stirred her soul, and then you let her wonder what it meant to lose that kind of man. Summary. When she walked away, she didn't just lose a man. She lost the standard by which she'll silently measure every man after you. You weren't just someone she dated. You were the turning point in her evolution. The man who didn't just enter her life, but reshaped the way she saw herself and the world. You were the stillness that calmed her chaos, the strength that didn't demand attention, and the warmth that didn't need to be loud. You didn't just show her love. You showed her what it looked like to be deeply respected and genuinely challenged at the same time. That's why walking away from you wasn't just the end of a relationship. It was the loss of a mirror, the loss of a man who held her to a higher version of herself, not through pressure, but through presence. She didn't just lose comfort. She lost the standard by which she'll now compare every man that follows. And the truth is, most won't measure up. Because the kind of man who can love with strength, who leads without control, who protects without possession, is rare. So if you're that man or becoming him, don't waver, don't shrink, keep building, keep rising, because the right woman won't be intimidated by your strength. She'll be inspired by it, and she'll be ready to rise with you, not run from you. If this message stirred something real in you, if it made you pause to reflect on who you were, who you are now, or who you're becoming, take a moment, like this video, share your story in the comments. Has she ever tried to come back? What changed and what didn't? And if you're new here, welcome. Subscribe to Stoic Station, because this journey isn't about chasing, it's about reclaiming. And the next chapter? It begins with your silence, not the kind that punishes, but the kind that reveals. Because when you stop speaking, she starts wondering, not with apologies, but with tests. And in that moment, your response matters more than ever. Why does she test you? And how do you stay grounded without slipping back into who you were? I've left the next video for you in the pinned comment. Watch it. You'll know exactly what to do next.